Thank you everyone for joining this evening. We have a really exciting talk today. We are going to be hearing from Yair Saperstein, who's the founder and CEO of avoMD. Dr. Saperstein has built avoMD. It's a software building virtual clinical consultants. He is a board certified internal medicine physician. He's affiliated with Mount Sinai and a proud graduate of SUNY Downstate internal medicine residency program. He is a member of AOA and graduated from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine with distinction in research in global health. And he was the valedictorian at Yeshiva College. Previously, Dr. Saperstein has co-founded two nonprofit organizations, both startscience.org and teachforkids.org. He is an outstanding entrepreneur, and I'm really excited to hear about his journey in starting up a company. I'll turn it over to Yair.
Thank you, Dr. Berger, and it's a pleasure to be here. Topic today is starting a digital health company. And what I wanted to do is to go through really three main topics. One is an intro, just to give you a background to myself. And then the two main topics that follow are in practice. How did I start avoMD? What was my journey? How did we progress? And then the process. You know, if I can structure this into three final slides, what are the takeaway messages and the takeaway points in the process of how to do it that you can really take with you in leaving this seminar? And then I'm hoping to leave open at least 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes for questions, comments, and discussion. So we start with the intro. I'm Yair Saperstein. And as you heard a little bit from Dr. Berger, I went to college in Yeshiva University. Once I finished with college, I went to medical school at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, now called the Einstein College of Medicine. Followed by Downstate, where I was in internal medicine residency, as well as a chief resident, serving at Kings County Hospital for the Downstate Internal Medicine Residency Program, as well as a Master's of Public Health through the wonderful School of Public Health. And now affiliated with Mount Sinai Hospital, where I practice as a hospitalist in internal medicine. And I'm very proud of the two nonprofits, which I helped found. One of them is Start Science. The other one is Teach, Together Educating All Children in Hospitals. And both of these are education-focused nonprofits. And really, it's the same thing that I'm going to talk about with the company avoMD, which is the highlight which I want to discuss today. But the same thing applies when starting nonprofits as when starting companies which are health tech, which is really thinking about the problem holistically, the people that you want to serve, and how you're going to do it. And so those are really the three aspects, which is the problem, the people, and how. So we start with in practice, avoMD. And before I get to what is avoMD and what does it mean virtual clinical consultants and how does the technology work, I wanted to start with my process, which is starting with the idea or the problem. And it starts from when I was in residency. I was a happy resident, or maybe happy in this sense, where I was sometimes overwhelmed with everything that I had going on in residency. And I think one of the reasons that I was overwhelmed was because take just clinical medicine itself and take some of the guidelines that are coming out for chest pain, COPD, UTIs, pneumonia, COVID, everything as changed by COVID. And, you know, at that time, there really wasn't COVID, but still it was overwhelming when I was a resident because of all these guidelines that were out. And not only that, but this is my inbox. I took a little screenshot of it for you, where I was constantly getting, oh, well, this is how we do it in Downstate. This is how we do it in Kings County. This is how we do it in the VA. Every hospital has its own workflow. And then within the residency program, well, here's the expectations within the residency program for when you're with this patient. And so how was I supposed to keep all of that together as one? Now, these are the guidelines. On the other hand, this is the best practice alerts that I was getting within the EHR. So this one, yeah, I'll just hit OK with partially reading it. This one I'll just hit okay. And, you know, it's something which just constantly popped up as these alerts within the EHR. So on the one hand, it was overwhelming to have all of this information from the guidelines. On the other hand, there's what's called alert fatigue, which is so many alerts coming in from the EHR, from the electronic health record, that it's just, I can't keep up with all of this stuff. And so I transitioned from that first happy resident to that second happy resident. Now, at the time, when I was, this was towards the end of first year of residency, you know, I had started to get involved in different projects in the residency program. So we were transitioning to Amion, which is a two-way communication system. And so I was involved in that project. And there were some other projects that were going on. And so I said, look, you know, maybe this is really a problem of burnout. Maybe I can get involved to help start the wellness committee and really moved in that direction and thought, well, maybe I can solve this problem in other ways. We had the open mic night where people came together. We started a ski trip. We started other wellness activities. And, you know, while that was nice with the problem of burnout and wellness and an overall issue, it didn't solve this problem of clinical information being overwhelming. And the way to solve it also was not order sets because, or alerts, because that gave alert fatigue. And so we said, okay, maybe I can take all of those guidelines and what if I would just write them out in little shorthand for myself? If I can just script it out into an algorithm that's on my index card, then maybe I'll have something like this, which was usable for me. Maybe anybody here, it's not really as usable for you, but I felt good about it. And as soon as I had enough of those papers, I started using my phone to take pictures of them so that I would have what I call digital algorithms, which is really just pictures of my little chicken scratches so that I would have quick access to it when I was on the floors or even in clinic to be able to really reference the material that I needed in a way that was quick. And fast forward, and some other residents really wanted access to it. And can we share this information? And we certainly can now that it's digital. You know, you can take a picture of my sheet, or I can send you the picture. Fast forward again to when I met PJ and Dr. McFarlane are the two who are on the screen here. PJ was a fellow at the time in Columbia University in the Department of Biomedical Informatics. And I did an elective in this department during residency. And together with PJ and guided by Dr. McFarlane, who's the program director of internal medicine at Downstate, we wrote this paper based on an app that we built together. And the paper was about how we might be able to really close the mortality gap for one condition, DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, and hyperosmolar hyperglycemic state. So how can we take that one condition and using this app, if we can take all the information together, can we really make a better outcome for our patients? So, you know, on the one hand, there's my burnout as a resident. On the other hand, there's, can we have improved outcomes for our patients? And so we started by building one app and taking my chicken scratches and really building it based more on the American Diabetic Association guidelines than my chicken scratches and changing it into an app. Fast forward more and we get to the people, right? So the first concept is the idea, the product. So we had a basic idea. We built it for one condition. And then we get to, okay, who are the supporters? Who are the mentors? Who can push it forward? So I really want to call out three people in particular because they're part of the Downstate community. So one is Dr. Isabel McFarlane. She was my mentor during my internal medicine residency program. And she was the one who first told me about the idea of clinical informatics. Clinical informatics is the nexus of medicine and computers. And it's the people who have the knowledge of clinical medicine and then the knowledge of electronic health records, patient information and how to make that digital and incorporate that into health and so on and so forth. And so she said, hey, you should really look into this. And that's how I ended up finding this Department of Biomedical Informatics, where I met the guy that I showed you on the slide before, Junhoon. Dr. Eva Kramer was the person within Downstate who introduced me to the Downstate Biotechnology Incubator and to the Entrepreneurship Lab, which is a bio and health tech New York City lab, almost like a mini course in how to start a company. And it was run by the New York City Department of Commerce Startup Lab. I was in the 2019 cohort. And the lab itself was run by Mary Howard within the Downstate Biotechnology Incubator. And so by working with these mentors and my team, we were really able to take this idea which we had for one clinical condition and start to develop into, okay, who are we going to target it for? How are we going to get information from them? What are next steps over here? How do we know that what we're doing is actually useful for more people than just us? How are we going to turn it into a business plan? How are we going to create a pitch? And we started to get more insight from that. And some of these questions were the questions that we faced. And over here, my icon on the right is for the business plan or for the pitch. And the question is, who will use it and who will buy it? So the first question was really, who will use it? And so as a resident at the time, I figured, well, maybe this is going to be useful for other residents. We ended up putting it up on the App Store. And on the App Store, we checked later, a couple years later, actually, and we had 40,000 downloads. And so we said, okay, this is definitely something which is useful. We can understand even just from that impact that there's something that people enjoy using and that people find utility in. But who will buy it? How do we make a sustainable business? How do we make sure that we can continue to grow and scale and continue to give this positive impact that we want to focus on? And we said, okay, maybe we can sell to individual clinicians, but that was on such a small scale and such a low scale that we said, okay, maybe we can sell to hospital systems. Maybe we can sell to clinics. Maybe it'll provide more use for them. And then we can still have the same users, but a different customer. And so we can still target the same physicians, clinicians who are able to benefit from the app, but have a different pay source so that the out-of-pocket cost doesn't have to come from the users. And so that's how we progressed there. And at each of these steps, we did something called customer discovery. Customer discovery is where you speak to the potential user, potential buyer, and find out from them, well, what are you looking for? Well, what would be a benefit to you, and what's your current process, and why are you looking for something different? And so as we went through this process, we were able to learn at each step. And as we progressed, we really were able to sell to a lot of customers here. These are some of our enterprise customers. And we had supporters and partners throughout also. And so within supporters and partners, I'll call out the American Heart Association. We recently spoke at the symposium this past Sunday about their new chest pain guideline and how we digitized it into our app. I'll show you in just a slide or two a way that you can download it for free as the end user. And then on the supporters partner side, also just want to call out Columbia University, who we are partnering with for our behavioral health guidelines to be able to continue forward. And then just want to make one more note that I'm forever grateful to Downstate for really all of that, starting, I guess, the starting juice that really got us to move and the right people, and are looking forward to continue to working together. And so as we progressed here and we said, okay, we now figured out who our users are going to be. We figured out who our buyers are going to be. Then we said, well, okay, we have this for one or two conditions, but how do we get every hospital's condition that's on? How do we get across the gamut of clinical conditions onto our app? It's impossible to take every guideline, make sure that it's up to date, make sure that it is adequately representing what it should represent. This is something which is an impossible task. And we said, okay, what if we're able to make a tool that lets other people create these apps? What if this were possible to scale? And so then we shifted our focus for the last 3 years or so, 2.5 years, to making a builder. And this builder that we created is a no-code tool, which means that you don't need to know programming language. And we put it in the hands of our customers and put it in the hands of our users and said, okay, build. Let's see what you can come up with. And through that process, we're really able to scale because it's the clinical experts who are able to build the next parts of it. And as we continue to learn and continue to scale, then the content continually increases. And so as we're focused on the customers, rather than just the users, we said, well, there's really 4 things that they want, which we learned from the process of customer discovery. They need content. And so this content can be society guidelines, or maybe hospital guidelines, hospital workflow. They said, we won't do this unless you're able to integrate into the electronic health record, because otherwise clinicians are not going to want to exit from here and open up a new app. So we started on EHR integration and are now live in one site and are now doing implementation into Epic with Mount Sinai and hopefully continuing forward with our EHR integration. Then the next step is analytics. They said, well, we want to know how the clinicians are using it. How often are they using it? How are they using it? So we started setting up analytics so that we can get more insights into usage and see if there's any gaps. And then the last one was some institutions said, well, look, if we're going to use the builder and we're going to put all this effort into it, we want to be able to sell our guidelines to other people once we create it. So we set up a marketplace. So now within our content library, you can choose the existing content, and then some of that revenue goes back to the creator. And that's really how we came up with this virtual clinical consultant from that original problem where it was overwhelming for me as a resident. And through this journey of creating the company, we came up with this, where let's say I'm a primary care provider. I can access the medication library for my patient who, let's say, has depression, and I'll hit X. And as I go through over here, let's say I'm, taking them for an initial management, and in depression, they're mild to moderate depression severity. Let me choose mild to moderate. So this is an example of what we created. Let's say they're passively suicidal. So I'll click on passive suicidal ideation, and it guides me as the provider through each of the next steps. Let's say they're bipolar negative on the screen. So I'll choose negative bipolar screen here, and they're 20 years old. And you see that it really takes me through each of these next steps of what I need to do as a primary care provider, which we learned from that journey. And so now we have over 150 content modules that are part of it. We've sold to over 15 institutions. We've partnered with societies as great as the American Heart Association. And we've created this, which if you want to scan with your phone, is a free version for anybody to be able to use, which includes the chest pain guidelines and many others. And so that takes me to the next part, which is, all right, so cool, Yair, you've been able to start avoMD, which is a digital health company, but can you give me more of a recipe, a step-by-step that I can take home, maybe 6 steps, or we'll get to 2 major overarching principles so that I can start my own digital health company? And so that's what I wanted to talk about next. So the first part is the idea and the product. What and why? Why do you want to start a digital health company? What product are you looking to introduce? And in introducing it, what problem are you trying to solve? And a lot of times people will start with the product and then get to the problem. But the recommendation is really to go the opposite way. Start with the problem. What are you trying to solve and why? And as you solve it, if you're solving it for yourself, great. If you're solving it for others, then you need to make sure that you understand what do they want and how can you validate that? And that can be done with customer discovery, asking them, okay, how does it currently work? What are the issues that you're solving? What are the issues that you're having? What are your pain points? And then validating, okay, next step is, good, I understand that these are the problems. Then later showing the product and, okay, can you tell me your insights from the product? Does this solve the problem that you're facing? Part 2, and there's no specific order to these, is the team. Developers, co-founders, and you may be able to find them from people that you're in class with, people that you know, reaching out to mentors, may be able to find them from participating in competitions. You may be able to find developers on freelancing sites. You could just search for developers, maybe even through schools. Downstate has a large network, and you can find it from within Downstate or from any other institution that you've previously been in. Third part, be official. So we registered as a C Corp early, and for 2 reasons. One is if you get sued, you are a company rather than an individual. And so as you progress in this, you want to make sure that you are official. And the second is, how do you fundraise if you can't distribute part of your company to other people that are contributing to you? So the ability to distribute equities or to give part of your company to those who are funding in you is a major aspect of it. And then you can consider a provisional patent. A lot of times within digital health now, it's just about who can do it faster and who can do it better, rather than protecting it with a provisional patent. But you can consider if there's something that's really unique to what you're building, instead of just being the first to do it, actually filing a provisional patent. It's not expensive to file this. An actual patent is expensive, but by that time, you'll see where you've progressed. 3 more steps. The next is the business plan. This is where you formalize it, where you actually make it into something that you are going to be able to communicate both to yourself and articulate to others all of these other things that we talked about, including who are the users, who are the customers, what kind of financial model and projections do you have? How are you going to make money? And can you do it on a unit cost basis? Like, this is how much it's going to cost for us to produce something. This is how much we're going to get from selling it. This is how many people we think we're going to sell to. And so these are our projections for the next couple of years. And then there's the pitch. How do you capture the story? How do you get people in? And as you're getting people in and really enrapturing people in your story and everything that's within the business plan in a pitch, the question is, do you have different versions and do you need different versions? And likely the answer is yes. You are going to need an elevator pitch. I remember back when I was practicing my first elevator pitch, I was actually riding an elevator up and down and talking to people that went into the elevator. It's not usually used in a literal sense, but I figured I could practice in a literal sense. And so I tried to pick a building in New York City that had a lot of floors so that I would have more time to actually do my elevator pitch. It's very hard to get it down to just a sentence or two. And then not only that, but there's different versions based on who you're speaking to. Are you speaking to your user? Are you speaking to an investor? Are you speaking to a customer? Are you speaking to a potential developer? And as you're speaking to them, you're going to want to articulate different aspects of your story, different aspects of your needs, different aspects of your users and customers and journey. And so you might want to create different versions of your pitch that capture that. And then the last part over here is funding. How are you going to continue to grow? One way is that if you can get customers early, you might not need funding. Another one is you can apply for grants. And as you apply for grants, you can get what's called non-dilutive funding, which means that you don't need to give a portion of the company over to others because it's coming in from grants, which is use this money as the way of building and you'll give something else back. There's family and friends. If it's an idea that you believe in, so you can invest in it yourself, you can have your family and friends invest in it. And then third is VCs, venture capitalists, which is venture capital is money which is a portion to businesses to be able to help the businesses grow. And so you can apply to these venture capital firms to be able to give money. But what I'd really like to do is boil it down to 2 overarching principles, which I want to focus on, which is 1, seek out mentors, and 2, seize opportunities. So seek out mentors. I think my journey in creating avoMD and also in creating the 2 nonprofits was very much contingent on the mentors that I had. And this is an active seek out mentors, find the right people who might be able to help you. In starting 2 of the nonprofits, one was a chemistry teacher, Raji Viswanathan, who was very influential for me. She was also an assistant dean of Yeshiva University at the time, or maybe a dean of Yeshiva University at the time. And I remember that it was her insight that really got me thinking about how we can create this nonprofit and make it something that can scale. And, you know, I think I employed that throughout each of these 3 companies. And Dr. Isabel McFarland and Downstate was especially influential in avoMD and about how to start that. And I think throughout this process, actively seeking out mentors was a major part of it. I remember before starting avoMD, I spoke to about 30 people who had started their own digital health companies or were involved in health tech so that I can get their insights into what did they find useful, what were some difficulties that they had, if they can go back 20 years, what were pitfalls that they would have told their earlier self. And as I spoke to them, I got more and more questions that I wanted answers to that I was able to get insights from. So biggest thing, seek out mentors. Number 2, seize opportunities. For opportunities, it's different. You don't need to go out and seek the opportunities as actively. You don't need to go search and be worried, oh no, you know, I don't have this skill or I don't have this opportunity. It doesn't need to worry you in that way. Rather, sit back, but as the opportunities come, always have your eyes open for them. And as soon as they come, grab the opportunities to be a part of it. Don't let them pass by without you taking an active part. I think this was a major aspect for me also, that in going through these processes, when I was at the Department of Biomedical Informatics at Columbia. So I was trying to actively seek out mentors. But when the opportunity came up that one of these mentors who I had met said, hey, I'm working on this software, and he was building avoMD, that's Jung-Hoon Park. I said, you know what, why don't we work together to turn it into a company and make it official and grow? And so it's really seizing opportunities, which is the second aspect. And so here I conclude my formal presentation, which is just a little pinch to get involved. This is an opportunity here. If you have any interest in getting involved directly with what we're doing in avoMD, feel free to go to the website, avomd.com. There's a way to contact. You can also just reach out through this forum if you have any interest in getting in touch. And we're definitely open to different ways of collaborating, finding synergy within public health, within clinical medicine, within creating content and distributing content. So definitely involved from the perspective of my company. Also interested and open to speak with anyone, both within the context of this forum where we can have questions, but then beyond, if you want to speak about any topic, career choices, alternative careers in medicine, digital health companies, or beyond, I'm open to that discussion too. And so thank you for the opportunity to present here, and I'd love to answer any questions.
So Yair, that was a great talk. Thank you so much. If Chris, do we have the mics open so people can ask questions?
Yep. I think Ms. Howard, Mary Howard wants to ask a question.
You have a hand up.
You can unmute.
Go. Okay, you're good.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Yair. Great to
Hello, Mary.
I think for many people, you're really getting an opportunity to hear from a real clinician, entrepreneur, and we're seeing more of them. And so it's very, very exciting to have this. You speak at SUNY Downstate to other people. We know there's more people who are interested. And while we're all sad not to have you as our doctor, we're very grateful that you're making healthcare better for yourself and for other people. So keep it up. And for many people, this was unimaginable that a clinician could be an entrepreneur, even as much as 5 years ago. So thank you for being a pioneer. It's really wonderful to be able to see your progress.
Thank you. And Mary, thank you personally for all of the help along the way.
Our pleasure.
Anyone else would like to make a comment or have a question?
I see a question in the chat. What advice would you have for people who are not quite as tech savvy? So happy to take that. And I'm not particularly tech savvy. I don't know. I never took any formal courses in computer coding. For me, it was more about finding the right people that I can work with. So I've done a bunch of projects in computers before, and I've been involved from mostly an operational standpoint in how to get it to work and how to get it to work within a workflow. But I've never taken active part in the coding part itself. So I would say same advice as my last slide, seek out mentors and seize the opportunities. So find people who do know it or who do have connections to those who can code, or even search on some of the freelancing websites, and you'll find partners that you can work with.
So I'll add, Dr. Kaufman, David.
Thank you for that talk. It was very interesting, and I'd love to share it with my students, hopefully inspire them to bigger and better things. So technology is sort of a cup half empty, a cup half full, depending how you look at it. There's so much about it being onerous, challenging, contributing to burnout and burden. And practically, we're asking more and more of clinicians, of patients, and so forth. And as we add additional tools, and we're all trying to do that, we're challenged to grow the acceptance and to say, okay, here's some more documentation you need to do. Here's a new task. But you seem to have a very positive outlook, and it seems you seem to have had a very good experience in, is it particular to the kind of tool, or are you doing something in your discovery activities that resulted in a better user experience?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. So what I would suggest is always focus on the problem. And so when you're thinking about, for example, for me, it was my overwhelming problem that I was having with this information on the one hand, and then the way that alert systems worked on the other hand. And so it's, how do I put it together in a way that works well? And now we're getting continual feedback.
X-ray tech, come to recovery room.
And so we're getting continual feedback. And so, for example, some of the feedback that we're getting from our implementations now is, can you help generate a note? Because we don't want to go through the process twice. So we just added note generation ability so that as you're making the medical decision making, you can actually document that automatically. And so everything is with this focus. I think clinicians and those who are involved on the ground might have even deeper insight. And so for me, I draw on my own experience where, I don't want something that's just going to cause me extra work. I want things that are going to save me work. I want things that are reference tools for myself. And so as I'm thinking about the problem for myself, I have everybody else's insight, but I also have my own experience that I'm drawing on. And just one other part of it, I think, is, as a clinician who's being asked for getting more patient insight and more tasks within the electronic health record, we thought about that also in avo, where it's, what if I'm able to do things with the patient, shared decision making? So order sets, alerts, they're not able to do that. But if you can incorporate that into your decision tools, so for example, in the chest pain guidelines, it says, ask the patient if they want to just go down medical decision, a medical treatment, or if they want further tests. We can incorporate that, and then it's a choose your own adventure with the patient. So you can even add autonomy there in a way that purely EHR wouldn't do, but can still save the clinician time and effort.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one from Dr. Lambert. How do you think we as an academic medical center can better foster an entrepreneurial mindset in the way that we're training, particularly for students, residents, fellows, et cetera?
Multi-pronged approach. One is I would set up electives for students, residents, fellows to be able to be part of this entrepreneurial activity. So you need to have a leader of that elective, or the right, if it's going to be within industry or within outside, then somebody who's going to coordinate that. If it's going to be inside, something that can guide forward. I recently spoke at an entrepreneurship class last night, actually, and spoke at Montefiore has an innovation and biodesign seminar and class. And so setting up something like that where people can go through either a fellowship or at least have electives within it can help foster it. And then I think from an institutional standpoint, as a medical center itself, having a tech transfer office that's able to really facilitate these ideas and has a good process for being able to help translate it into the real world and help with that aspect would be great. So the mindset, I think, comes from the elective, and then from the institutional perspective, having the structure to make it happen can really push it forward.
Dr. Christini, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Yair, for that talk. Very exciting, and for all the tips. Very helpful. I have a kind of a specific avoMD question. So the 150 or so content modules, I may have missed this, but do you or does someone on your team curate them to make sure that things that are submitted are accurate or legit? And a related question is, if somebody wants to, out there wants to submit what they think is a better module for the same syndrome or illness, can you have more than one for the same thing? Is it a market competition?
So let me describe the process and then try to answer your questions directly. So from the perspective of a prospective enterprise customer, they would be able to search through our content library and choose which of those contents they would want to purchase, which part of that revenue is going to go to the producing content partner. So let's say, for example, you decide to purchase the behavioral health content. Part of that purchase is going to go back to Columbia University. Now, you may decide, look, we have a great behavioral health department here. We'd rather take the builder, which is this no-code tool, and build it ourselves. You don't have to purchase what already exists within the content library. Now, within the content library, there may be multiple entries for a single condition or multiple approaches to a single condition. So for example, there might be a chest pain, and then there might be another one that's called NSTEMI. And so you might want to choose one or the other depending on how you think clinicians are going to think this through. And that kind of marketplace thought is also the, so let's take each of your questions. First one is, who vets it? So our content partners are the one that vet it. We are not a content company, we're just a software company. Obviously, we have clinicians and informaticians who are part of it. And so there's nothing that's going to be outlandish, but we always have it checked either by our institutional partners or our society partners. So for example, chest pain, 2 of the guideline authors checked it for content accuracy, and they're listed within the content so that you can see how it was vetted and then decide as an enterprise customer which of those you trust. And then on the side of, can there be multiple, and how does that work? So, there can be, because each of the different proprietary guidelines may exist within the overall library, but as an enterprise customer, your users wouldn't see all of that because you would choose that as you start to get the subscription.
So there's a quick practical question. How might I go about vetting developers on a site like Fiverr?
Yeah, one way is you can ask them to send stuff that they've done previously. And, as they send you projects, you can see what it looks like. So some of the people that we asked to send, what they sent, it didn't look like a nice UI. And so we pass on them immediately. That's like a first check. If you like everything that you see from what they've built before and from what you've heard before, see if you can find somebody who's more tech savvy, to go back to the previous question, who can kind of weigh in on that. And so that goes out to the Seek mentors actively, and see if you can get that second step of a check before you'll invest too much money in this person.
So thanks, here. I have a few questions because I've been through this before, and you make it sound you make it sound so easy to build a company to the point that you've built it, and I know it's not. So first of all, what are the important parts of a really good and tight pitch deck? And when do you decide to actually go out to try to raise money outside of friends and family? And how much equity do you try to preserve when you do that?
There is no one answer to any of those 3 questions. So the first question is, what goes into a tight pitch deck? So if you search Google for building a pitch deck, you'll get a better, more concrete answer that I'm going to give you. And that would be my starting place as a recommendation. You want to be able to tell your story effectively. And it really depends on your audience. So I have a pitch deck for customers. I have a pitch deck for collaborators. I have a pitch deck for VCs that I'm fundraising. And each of these have slightly different information, and they're each tight pitch decks in their own way. Things that you want to think about are your story, including the problem, the solution. You want to think about the market that you're overall in. You want to talk about competitors. You want to talk about traction. You want to talk about financials. Those would be initial things to think about. Again, I would just use Google as a pitch deck. There's standard pitch deck templates and pitch deck outlines that you can use to pick from. Those are some of the major aspects. And what we talked about today also are, I think the 6 major aspects that you want to think about as you're building it. Second question of yours was fundraising. When is the right time to go out beyond friends and family? And I think that answer is when you need it. So again, it's more of it's not a hard and fast answer. I would make that decision together with mentors. And so it all goes down to seek out mentorship, depending on the specifics of what's going on. Do you have the ability to survive longer, even if you're not able to successfully raise? Do you have enough traction? Maybe it doesn't mean revenue, but it means traction in some other way to prove that what you're going to do is successful, to prove to somebody else that they should put in money. So I think those are things to think about. And then the third one was, how much equity do you give away or save? So the one recommendation that I heard is that you can give away a quarter at a time. And so the question is, what does that quarter represent? However, I do not think that that applies universally. I think it really depends. How much are you willing to give away? I remember speaking to one mentor who said that he wasn't willing to give away anything. So he bootstrapped it all by putting it all in himself. And now he's he's got his own successful company and owns 100% of it. The other saying is, it's better to own 1% of $1 billion company than it is to own 100% of a $100 company. And so, you want to make sure that it's going to be successful. And I think that's been my guiding principle, which is, what can we do to make it successful? Whether that means that we give away more, that we give more insight, that we get more people on board, it's really all about its success and use.
So we have a question for someone who wants to be your partner on your next project. It says, what is another problem within healthcare that you're looking to find a solution?
I like it. So for me personally, I've been thinking a lot about decentralized healthcare. And I actually recently wrote an article, I think it came out about a month ago, about the way that the world is becoming more decentralized, which to me means becoming more democratized. That people, patients, have individual autonomy to be able to think about what they want to do, and therefore need to be empowered with the educational tools and the right information to be able to make those decisions. And it's not just for healthcare. Education in this way has also become decentralized. Finances have also become decentralized, and medicine has become decentralized in many ways. So for me, I think a major problem is, how do we give patients the autonomy and the factors and the data to be able to make their own informed decisions? Part of that is language, part of that is access. How do we make sure that there is there's always going to be inequities, but how can we limit and close inequity gaps in a way that can make it that even those who don't have internet can also get it, if everything is through the internet? And so how do we solve this on a large scale for global health and for population health, and thinking about really giving autonomy to patients to solve it? And happy to talk about this problem more. I think there's many problems within healthcare that are ready for solutions. I think this is an overarching principle for me, not necessarily sure that anyone, and myself included, has thought of a concrete answer.
Are there any other questions? Citation for the article Yair said he wrote last month on this topic. Can you put your citation in the chat, Yair?
Let's see. I will pop in the citation as soon as I get it.
Okay. Other questions? Well, Yair, I want to thank you for a really outstanding talk. What you've accomplished is really amazing in the short period of time you've been working on this. Obviously, you're a true entrepreneur and have the entrepreneurial spirit. We are really interested at Downstate in working with you on avoMD, whatever you want, however you pronounce it. And I'm sure we'll continue to hear more about you and the company. So thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure, and I look forward to working together as well. I've got a citation for you, so I will pop it in here. So for anybody that's interested in the article, I wrote it for 500 startups.
Okay. Well, everyone have a happy Thanksgiving and a great evening, and stay tuned for our next Digital Health Interest Group seminar. We'll be on hiatus until the new year. So thank you for being here today, and thank you, Yair, for the great talk.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for joining.